Thanks again for taking an interest in your local politics and governance. Today we're going to kind of smash two things together. So the A side is going to be looking over the proposed, or what's the term they use, tentative operating budget for the Brandon School Division for the 26-27 school year. And the B side will be taking a look at the City of Brandon Council meeting agenda for tomorrow night. Well, both of these are for tomorrow night. And I guess on that point, they're both being held approximately the same time. So there is a public consultation with respect to the BSD budget starting at 7:30 p.m. and city council meeting is starting at 7 p.m. So assuming this will take longer than 30 minutes, which is almost a surety, you may have to pick if you want to attend both. I'm probably speaking to a very small minority when I say that, however. So without further ado, 26-27 school year budget. This is where you can find it. I'll put that link in the description if you want to click on it easily. There are also links within this main page to the budget deliberations, which I think last I checked were about 3 hours in total. Because it's easier to add my highlights, I have already kind of exported that into its own separate tab. So I'll do my best to kind of guide you through here. So looking at the operating budget, as with all budgets, split into two ends, the revenue and the expenses. Normally they're equal. It appears that the previous year surplus or deficits may influence that and not make them exactly equal. But in terms of the percentage change year over year from 2025 to 2026, they're both approximately 6.5% changes. So the way or the strategy I typically use when looking at financial documents is focus on the biggest numbers first, in addition to any wild swings in the percentages. And not to say that everything I've highlighted here is wild by any stretch of the imagination, but simply the things that piqued my interest. Again, all these recordings are biased. You should engage your own critical thinking. So under the revenue slide, we have the provincial government end of things for the operating grant, essentially. I may have the verbiage slightly off there, plus the municipal government revenue, which boils down to local taxation and the mill rate. So those respectively have increased by 6% and 8.2% respectively. The provincial government change has been well documented in local news media, so I encourage you to look up all those different articles and details and commentary from your uh, members of the Board of Trustees. Interestingly, I don't know exactly what this federal government revenue is, but that was quite an interesting change of a 900% increase. You don't often see that, so I would expect that's probably a one-time injection and not guaranteed to occur again in future years or to even have any, well, consistency. And of course, uh, total municipal tax revenues would be increasing by 8%. Uh, it's difficult, well, if you're like me, it's a little difficult to try and parse the exact meaning of all the different numbers because you can see 8%, another place you might see 7.25% or 7.5%. These numbers can fluctuate depending on a lot of different variables. So I'm not going to try and dive in all those details too much. On the expense side, again, trying to boil down to what are the big line items. Regular instruction. So I assume that's all normal pupil instruction. Um, mo the majority of which is probably going to be staff wages if this was broken down not by necessarily the function, but the area of expense. I assume the lion's share of that is all staff and salary and benefits and all the rest of it. So that's going up from the previous year of, I guess I didn't point out the previous years, you can read, hopefully, 85 million to 91 million year over year, so a 7% increase, significantly above what I would consider roughly within line of inflation. Student support services going up from 20.5 million to 29.6 million, increase of about 3.7%. Instructional other support services, not the biggest line item in terms of dollar figure, but it is a significant percentage increase, going up by 17.7%, also well outside of inflation. Operating and maintenance budget at 12.9 million is an increase of about 600,000 from the previous year, 5.3%. Also, I would expect above inflation, but considering the, I'm editorializing now, considering the age of the BSD schools and properties, that's not necessarily a surprise. So, tentative budget includes the following according to the brief we have here. I've again highlighted some of the figures I think are the most interesting. So a 1.3% increase in enrollment of 134 students is the projection to 10,214 students. So again, this may be editorializing slightly, but if we take a look at these two divisions I've done, that was not meant to be a pun. We have about $140.4 million in expenses. That comes from this line in 25-26. You divide that by 10,080 students, so just taking that, subtract that, you get about $14,000 per year per student or per pupil. But if we look at this tentative operating budget for 26, you have 149.6 million in expenses for not that many more students, and now it's 14,600 per student. And I didn't do this before. Let's do it live. I don't actually know what that percentage increase would be. That's a 5% increase per pupil. So technically actually below the 6.5% overall operating budget increase, but still significant. Net increase of 5.4 full-time equivalent teaching positions. So 5.4, it's mostly just 5 when you look at the, well, the net, of course, is 5.4 because there's a reduction here, but 5 full-time equivalent teachers to assist with pupil-teacher ratio. Net increase of 39 full-time equivalent support staff. To me, that seems like quite a lot, but I've also never paid too close attention in prior years to BSD budgets to know if there's an explanation for why, like, is this routine? Is this normal to see wild swings like this because they are all support staff? That I don't know. But some of the bigger numbers in here were addition of 10.73 full-time equivalent for controlled monitored access at schools. I think there's a line item I may have not highlighted. Well, I'll skip over that. And the 6.39 full-time equivalent EAs for implementation of a teacher EA ratio. School tax impact, this kind of gets back to what I was saying before about, there's this number, then there's a different number, and they can kind of look different. Tentative budget results in an annual increase of 7.25% on total school taxes based on an average single-family home valued at $301,300 prior to the homeowner's affordability tax credit. So they have this, it's not the best quality image, but there is this image, which kind of gives a sample of what the taxation increase on a residential property at that assessed value would be. So their original highlights and their color coding here are these ones in yellow. I've added these ones in pink. So you have a 2025 to 2026. In 2025, the total school taxes would have been around $1,900. In 2026, again, tentative is now $2,048. So you can see that that's the what I guess you could consider the gross tax bill. But after you go net of the homeowner's affordability tax credit, $1,600 this year, $1,500 in 2025, you can see the net school taxes is very, very different. So this tax credit is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting. And it's probably worth mentioning that because this applies to my personal situation, so I'm familiar with this. You only get up to that credit. So if your school tax bill, this gross line, is less than 1,600, you don't get a full 1,600, and that becomes a credit somewhere else. Or a refund somewhere else. It's just you get up to that amount. Period. And that's on your primary residence. And there's some other technical and bureaucratic detail which I am not qualified to discuss here. So in their example here, they're pointing out that, again, average assessed value property, residential property, this doesn't get into commercial or business or industrial, but that would be a net annual increase of $38. And I think that's pretty much all I had for this. This tab here is a 2025 slide deck. So I'm not going to go through this because I don't want to distract from the 2026-2027 discussion, but I did not find a slide deck for 2026 to 2027 or a slide deck for what's going to be presented tomorrow. So there may be more details, there may be fancier, more helpful graphics or graphs or pie charts or who knows presented tomorrow, which the public will be able to see. But yeah, that is something to perhaps expect, but I am in no way able to guarantee. So with that, we'll conclude the again, the A side, and we'll go to the B side. So again, regular council meeting for City Branding Council. Tomorrow, I don't think there's a special meeting. I didn't see one. One thing I'm going to mention, and this is the reason I'm recording and publishing this on Sunday, as opposed to what I've been usually doing, which is Monday. This is a departure from normal. Usually, I check the Brighton City website to see if agendas have been published on Friday, just to get a rough idea of what's going to happen or what's coming before council. And usually, they don't include general business or bylaw attachments when published on the Friday, with minimal exception. I think sometimes they publish minutes. I may be wrong on that. They also publish, if there's a public hearing, they'll publish information with respect to just the public hearing. But this is different, and I'm really tangenting now. That whole process changed in late 2024, where they stopped publishing all the attachments. But this seems to have changed, where this is the agenda that was published on Friday, and it includes links to the supplemental attachments and information. So I like that change. I like it quite a lot because I've criticized that before. But let's just get into these attachments at this point. So, City Council report, Vision Zero Road Safety Plan. I guess I totally forgot to even give the layout of the agenda. Not a whole lot. So, minutes as usual. No presentations, no delegations, no public hearings. A couple committee reports, which will likely go by quickly. And then the general business, the main item is really the Vision Zero Road Safety Plan. And I have not been paying attention to City Council for long enough to give enough background as to this Division Zero in general. But once again, trying to highlight the parts that caught my eye. True focus here was the creation of the Vision Zero report card. So it's also alluded or mentioned in this document earlier that this appears to have been one of the things that's been worked on for several years and is something to continue to focus on over the next 3 to 5 years. So if I'm interpreting this document right, there's a lot that I'm not going to read through all this again. I've just highlighted things that I found interesting, which you can pause and maybe focus attention if you feel my judgment was a worthwhile exercise. But there's a lot of things. So they have kind of different strategic pillars is what I would call them. They call them themes across this report card. And this isn't a report card in the sense that these are all things that have been done. This is a report card or standards to follow and use in coming years, if I'm understanding all of this correctly. So there's one theme for safer people, and there's a lot of different things under different, they call them initiatives. I would probably call them something like programs, where there's safe routes for schools. So we're talking school routes, pedestrian data, snow clearing, priority service around school areas, enforcement in school zones, walking school buses, missing sidewalk, or sorry, that's under schools. So that's one whole like program. And of course, I've highlighted that the funding is all, or not all, but mostly either TBD or it has question marks. So whether council puts the money behind this will by and large determine whether any of these programs are successful. We have a sidewalk improvement program. So you have sidewalk capital programming, missing sidewalks, replacement sidewalks, a priority improvements list for sidewalks, sidewalk design, constructing new and replacement sidewalks, crosswalk enhancement, increasing timing of pedestrian crossing lights, etc. So I said I'm not going to read through all these. Safer people, that's one whole entire portfolio, almost might call it. I guess I'll scroll a little bit slower if you want to read those. Pause and read, rather. Then you have another strategic theme, so safer roads, installing and evaluating temporary bike lanes, alternative movements from default motor vehicles, active transportation strategy, pedestrian volume data, vehicle volume data, active transportation corridors, bike safety compliance, speed reduction pilots, speed or reduction speed limit review, traffic calming, image capture enforcement, which requires provincial legislature change. So that requires advocacy or what you might call lobbying, but lobbying is a charged term, so forget I said that. Speed reduction compliance, speed enforcement strategy. So an awful lot in that strategic theme, and then another final theme for education general public on safe movement, current state of road safety, promoting action plan. A lot of this is just awareness building is my takeaway. Related to the same subject is this slide deck, which is just kind of a condensed version of everything in that report. So that may be more accessible for most people. However, what it doesn't include, which isn't obviously in this document and the report card, is initiatives and spending in 2026. So maybe I didn't pay close enough attention during budget deliberations, but it's showing here that there's $800,000 in capital projects for crosswalk enhancements, pedestrian corridor near the hospital at Russell Street and Victoria Avenue East, half signal upgrades at 22nd Street, Richmond Avenue, which my understanding is that's a frequently used crosswalk during school, um, well, for school age children. Movement plan, so transportation master plan, I don't know precisely what that all entails, but those are the dollar figures assigned. And of course, it being a slide deck, any good slide deck and any good presentation won't have all of the detail within it because the orator or presenter will add more detail. That's the first item under general business, and the second one under general business is pretty straightforward. Citizen appointment to Brandon Urban Aboriginal Peoples Council. So not much to speak on there. With that, that was a longer recording, but hopefully condensed enough given that we were going over two different things, or some information on BSD, some information on CoB. So make your decision. Will you attend the Brand School Division meeting, City Brand Council meeting, or neither? If you go to the BSD one, I'll see you there.